Good morning.
Morning, Chair.
For some reason, you guys are up at the top really small. I don't know if that's a formatting thing, but.
Are you in gallery or speaker?
Speaker.
I think if you click gallery.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So I think we're just waiting for Ken. We should be ready to go. There's Ken. All right. Looks like everybody's here. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for February 17th, 2022. And Christian, would you lead us in the flag salute, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I just wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to Carolina and Megan. Megan's been doing a fantastic job helping us get these meetings in order and ready, and with the agendas and everything that we do behind the scenes. So I just wanted to say thank you to Carolina and Megan. Okay, that brings us to our calendar session. A couple things that I noticed. Number one, Monday is President's Day, and just to confirm, that is county offices are closed. Okay. And then the other thing I have was the Newburgh prayer breakfast, which is on April 2nd. That's quite a ways away, but we did get a reminder about that. So, commissioners.
Yeah, there was a moment where I panicked. I was like, wait, is it this? No, it's not this weekend.
Any other calendaring items?
Chair, it doesn't look like there's anything more on mine.
All right. Okay. We will move on to D, public comments. I believe we received one public comment this morning, so thank you for that. And moving on to E, department updates. And we have our district attorney with us today, Brad Berry. We'll wait for him to come on here.
You know, Chair, I learned a long time ago that ether doesn't exist. Like, there's not a matterless zone in the atmosphere. But I really feel like we're in the ether when we go from being an attendee to a panelist, caught in some weird zone.
Welcome, Brad.
Good morning. So I hit panelists and suddenly everything went black. I didn't know what was going to happen there. So, and then to come back on and have Commissioner Kula talking about going into the ether zone or whatever. So the timing was perfect.
All right. Well, the floor is yours. So welcome.
Thank you. I took the time, and I don't know if I can share my screen. I put some notes together in a PowerPoint that kind of illustrates the state of the department over here. And I don't know if I click something or if Carolina clicks something for it to show. Anybody know?
I believe it's on your end.
Okay, let me share screen and see if this works.
We can see it. I think you just have to maximize it.
Okay. How's that?
That works.
Okay. So good morning. Thank you. Actually, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the office and bring you guys all up to date on where we are. So I thought I would start with kind of some of the demands on the office and changes that we have seen so that you have some idea of what's going on over here. I know I've had the chance to talk with all three of you about the pressures that we're feeling here. And so hopefully this will help illustrate kind of where we are. So I thought I'd show you over the last 3 years, these are the referrals and filed cases that we've had. So the difference there is that when a case is sent to us by law enforcement, it's referred. And then we review it and opt whether to file or not to file for particular charges. And so that's the difference on how it is. And you can see on the charts to the left, the two taller ones, those are the number of misdemeanors sent to us and then filed to us for 19, 20, and 21. And then you can see the same numbers for felonies on the right. Now, a couple of things to note there when I start with the felonies anyway, is that we had the reduction of drug charges from felony to misdemeanors back in, I think it was 19, and thus we began to see a drop in the number of felony charges filed. We also had an increase in misdemeanors, but what is really interesting is that with ballot measure 110, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, we continue to see an increase in filings and misdemeanors, and that includes the elimination of drug charges for the most part, other than large drug deals and the like. So I'm going to talk a fair amount about the misdemeanor positions that we've got because that's where we're having some of our difficulties. But I thought this would give you some idea of kind of what our caseloads look like. The other thing of note here is, of course, this is through COVID. And, you had fewer, the inability to put people in jail. We had all kinds of other challenges that happened there. But the caseloads continue to be either where they were or growing. All right, so here's some areas that I need to spend a little bit of time on, and I'll go through each of these individually, but we have been having to deal with both ballot measure 110, Senate Bill 819, the RAMOS decision, commutations, and set-asides. And these are areas which are really front burner for us right now. So let me start, if I can, with the RAMOS. You're probably familiar with the RAMOS decision. The RAMOS decision effectively said that the Constitution requires unanimity, a 12-person unanimous jury to convict for a felony. That changed the law because the United States Supreme Court had previously decided 30, 40 years ago that in fact a 10-2 decision was constitutional. So it reversed that. And then in a subsequent decision, the US Supreme Court indicated that the RAMOS decision did not need to be retroactive. And it would only be retroactive to those cases that were still pending and where the challenge was still active, because there were a lot of cases awaiting the RAMOS decision by the Supreme Court that were sitting out in the Court of Appeals in Oregon. So currently, the legislature is working on legislation which deals with the retroactivity issue. I won't go into that in detail because one, I've not really been at the table. I get regular reports on where that is. It is, excuse me, it is limited somewhat or limiting somewhat such that it would not cover everything. But we do know that the Oregon Supreme Court will undoubtedly take this issue up. And the issue here from our perspective, the challenge in the DA's office is all of these cases that are being returned to us for retrial. So we have a bunch that are out there. We don't have the numbers yet because there's a lot of them. We don't know what how far back the Supreme Court the Oregon Supreme Court is going to reach for the potential of retrial. The difficulty obviously is old cases are hard to try, evidence is gone, witnesses are gone, memories fade. And where although it's a significant challenge for us having all of these cases come back for retrial, the place where it really is doing the most harm is with victims of crime, who we now have to bring back for retrial on cases that they thought were gone and over some time ago. Again, this is increasing our workload, having to do these cases again. I don't have good numbers on that yet, but insofar as you're interested, if you reach out periodically, we can tell you what we have. We already have several that are back in the office for retrial. This is one that you may have been reading about lately. The Governor Brown has been very receptive to the issues of commutations, pardons, and clemency. And it's interesting that in the 20 plus years that Kulongoski and Kitzhaber were governor, they granted a total of 22 pardons and 61 commutations over a 20-year period. Governor Brown has granted 35 pardons and 1,144 commutations in her term. Now, I need to be fair. Some of those, there was a vast amount that were juvenile from Measure 11. Those are the ones that she's being sued by 2 DAs and multiple victims for not following the law in granting commutations. She did grant several commutations for adults in custody who volunteered to fight wildfires during the massive fires of 2000, where are we? Labor Day weekend of 2020. There was impact that COVID had in the Department of Corrections. However, it is very clear that as receptive as she is, we're having more and more people who are applying for commutations. These come to us in a couple of ways. First, when somebody applies with the governor, I'm served with notice that they have made that application if it's our conviction. Then the governor's office reaches out on cases that they are considering and asks for input. We then have to contact victims, we get them involved, we respond to that to give information. And I don't know if you've seen the recent articles on the Lindley Rayburn application that happened, but that, I will tell you, that application was about 100 pages in length. That we had to go through. We engaged victims, so a bunch of staff time related to that. I provided a formal response to that application, but so long as I think this governor is in office, I think we're going to see the kind of demands put on us related to it. And of course, you probably saw this op piece in the News Register last week, which really, I thought, did a pretty good job of really pointing out the issues that are coming up based on the governor's receptivity to these types of applications. Next thing I want to talk a little bit about is ballot measure 110. I mentioned that earlier. This is the ballot measure that essentially legalized hard drugs. And we had anticipated that it would reduce our misdemeanor caseload, but as you saw from the first slide, our misdemeanor caseloads continue to increase. It is really too soon to tell what impact it's going to have on us. I anticipate that we will begin, we've already seen a incline in property cases and property crimes in the state, but I anticipate that that's going to get worse. That's candidly, it's a bit of a wag, but I think it's a reasonable one to have. And then, as you're well aware, overdoses have been skyrocketing. This, again, in fairness, this was happening before Measure 110 passed. It's gotten even worse now. Two things about that is a lot of counterfeit opioids, in particular what's not coming to me now, what we call the 30s are the counterfeit or opioids that are being laced with fentanyl. And a lot of drugs, including methamphetamine, is being laced with fentanyl because of its highly addictive properties. The other part is it's highly lethal. So as you know, every law enforcement officer now, I think in the county, carries Narcan with them. It's interesting how many drug users actually have Narcan in their homes. I had a case that I reviewed maybe 90 days ago, where in fact we had an overdose death, and the other person in the house, they both utilized opioids, but they didn't use together, such that if one were to pass out, the other could bring them back. And apparently, obviously, the one party did not use while the other party was asleep, because when that party awoke, she found him deceased. So that's what we're looking at there. This one's a big one for the office. Senate Bill 819 essentially provided a process for resentencing where a DA agrees, and where it seems that the sentencing was not appropriate. Once it's there, we put together a petition process where adult in custodies can make requests for us to review older cases where they're still in custody and are asking us to consider resentencing them. Well, I have a staff member assigned to both respond to requests for the application process, as well as to determine when the applications have been completed. And then we review those in-house after getting victims contact. We respond. We would be responsible for handling new hearings if we agree to go that route. These requests are coming in more rapidly almost every day. We are getting these requests for review of sentencing, and it's putting demands on the office there that we've never had before. This is one that is just became effective on January 1st. The legislature and the governor passed a bill that greatly expanded expungement. And I put that word in quotations because expungement is really not the correct word. It is a motion to set aside record of arrest and conviction, and greatly expanded what cases, what convictions would be eligible for that treatment. This is one that has had a huge impact on us. So in 19 and 20, we received between 70 and 80 petitions to set aside convictions. And in January of in 21, those rose to 114. But in January of this year, so last month, we received 45 petitions in the month of January. And if we stay on that pace, I think it's likely to increase. That would be an increase to 540 petitions to set aside, excuse me, records of conviction that we are having to deal with. This has a huge impact on attorney time and staff time related to having to deal with these requests, process them, get new orders, court hearings that are related to them. Excuse me a second. Now, I mentioned to you before that we of course, we face challenges. Even before these law changes, we were struggling to keep up. We just candidly don't have enough person power in the office to handle what we've had. One of the things that does hamper is our ability to maintain current and accurate records. One of the things I try to do is I try to watch our time to disposition on cases. Obviously, the delayed justice is justice denied, as the old saying goes, and we try to resolve cases as quickly as we can and as expeditiously as we can. One of those things that we have is closing out cases, because the system then will allow us to determine how long it took us on average to deal with a case. We don't have the staff ability to maintain those records in a good fashion. They get to them when they can, because that's the only thing on the desks that are not on fire. We continue to have a high level of pending cases. As I told you last year, going from 19 into 20, the first year of the pandemic, our pending cases at the end of the year had increased 400%. And we continue to have a tremendous number of cases that are just sitting out there pending, which means repeat case filings, delayed to get into trial. Now, I have in here that hopefully this will pick up with trials, because what happens is the defendants are not foolish. They know that a delay tactic, set it for trial. And then older cases are never, let's put it this way, age is never a benefit to the state. in cases. It rarely is. And so recognize that we can lose witnesses. What happens is victims lose interest. They get so tired of hearing that their case has been said over again and again. They just say, I'm not going to do this anymore. And they literally discontinue responding to us. So we just got the order. I think everybody saw that the courts are discontinuing social distancing, which should aid us in being able to use more than just one courtroom for trials. And our hope is that that'll happen. The other side of that sword, candidly, is now that puts more demands on a staff and attorneys that are already stressed. Our misdemeanor caseloads are unmanageable at their current levels. We've had some turnover there, but the one deputy that we had who was with us all year was assigned almost 750 cases last year. That's just totally unsustainable for us. We can't continue the level that we have in misdemeanor cases at the level we've got them. So those are kind of some challenges that we're going to have to continue to deal with, and of course keep you guys in the loop on. But with that, that's kind of the status of where we are. I'm happy to kind of answer any other questions that you guys might have or address any other issues that I didn't touch. So I'm going to unshare my screen. Now that's something I've not had to do before. So I see Commissioner Starrett, you have a question?
Yes, Brad, thank you for that. And I'm really sorry for the challenges in your office. It seems like you've had that prior to this, so it just continues to pile on. So what about, I always go back to that one unfunded mandate question, and Christian's heard me bring this up whenever we get handed some of these things from the state that we have to address. Where does that fit in with that percentage of the cost of doing this, and whether that factors into this and we'd be able to pull that card?
I guess it depends on which particular issue. So when you're talking things like the cases coming back to us based on the RAMOS decision, that's kind of like a reversal on appeal. And that's not a state mandate, it's a new law basically, or a new decision of the Supreme Court that now we have to deal with. So I don't see that as quite the same. When we talk about things like Senate Bill 819 and the like, I don't know the answer there. I don't know. I will tell you that I did not personally oppose 819 because I actually had a case where we've had it happen twice now, where we had obtained a conviction, we'd gone to trial on a case. 3 years later, I got information that really caused me doubt that it was a rightly done conviction. There is no statutory method to bring that case back. And 819 allows us to do that. I got that case back within 10 days of learning about the issue. I had the person out of prison and back in front of a judge. So in fact, when she came back in front of the judge, she didn't even know why she had been taken out of prison and was brought to the county jail on it. But because everybody agreed on it, there was nobody to appeal it, candidly. But that was a case where I discovered there was no mechanism by which we could correct that. So I felt this was a good thing. What I didn't anticipate was the large number of applications that we would be receiving and have to deal with. So, I've been doing this a couple of weeks. That's a pretty naive approach, I suppose, I came up with. But is that an unfunded mandate? Perhaps. I suppose the state could say, well, district attorney, you can reject these all out of hand. You don't have to do it at all. So that's a matter of what's a just thing. More of concern is this, you guys are well aware of the discovery cost issue that we came up with, that the Public Defense Services Commission refused to, beginning January 1, refused to pay for discovery. We're hoping to get some relief on that in the short session here. I've not heard the exact status of it, but I do know they have money in the RAMOS fix bill to deal with that issue, as well as to deal with additional discovery related costs on cases coming back to us because of the RAMOS decision. Is that fully funding, Commissioner? Probably not, but at least it touches a piece of it. I don't know if that, I'm trying to think what other stuff I just raised, but I know that we've, well, you've heard me at AOC talk about unfunded mandates, and I know AOC is very aware of it when we get those. From our perspective, it comes back to us, we have to get it done. So, you know, the state has long ago abandoned their partnership for cost of prosecution. That was the original agreement and intent back in the 70s when major changes were made to what was paid for by whom. And at that time, it was designed to be a partnership, and it's only eroded through year after year after year after year. I don't know that that directly answers your question, but that's kind of as I'm seeing it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I have a few.
Sure.
When you were talking about the cases being returned for retrial, what, and this might be a dumb question, but are these cases that are sort of at all stages? Like, you know, we might have an AIC, or we might have somebody who's already served a term and it's coming back. How is that working?
That's going to depend on two things, Commissioner. One, the current legislation, I think where it is, says that anybody who's in appeal status or who is still incarcerated or under supervision would have the ability to challenge their conviction if it was not a unanimous verdict and have it come back to us. The Supreme Court, though, may not agree with that. There is at least arguably an equal protection argument that if we separate this pool of people and say, you guys can come back for a mulligan, how come we're not letting these? And this statute, the 1012 statute, has been in place since the 30s. So potentially every felony conviction that we can't prove was by a unanimous verdict potentially could come back to us if the Supreme Court ruled that way. So my hope is that they would concur that a limitation of those who continue to be affected by, other words, are under supervision or they're incarcerated, excuse me, or they're on appeal. There's a logic to all of that to me, that those would be eligible to come back. Now, some of these, candidly, are people who've been in prison a very long time, right? They've had multiple convictions and they're in prison for a long time. Our ability to retry a 20-year-old case is really compromised, and that's at best.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talked about expungements. Is that, because I know the juvenile expungement laws changed recently, is that only related to adults, or is that juvenile as well that you were bringing the requests?
Yeah, the ones I'm talking about are adults. Okay. So they have been working on expungement related issues for about 4 sessions. So we're talking 8 years before they finally adopted one. But the one they ended up adopting expanded to, you know, almost, not necessarily person crimes, but almost every crime could be ultimately set aside, property crimes in particular. One of the interesting issues about that is it has the potential to gut Measure 57, the repeat property offender statute, because if you can now go set aside your prior convictions, we don't have anything to prove you've done it before, and thus you become a repeat property offender. So it's not a surprise. I mean, where the legislature currently is, this is not uncommon for the position where they land. And it's not for me to decide, it's up to them to decide. But we're getting huge numbers of these requests right now, and they are eating us alive on time.
Sure. You mentioned the clemency issue with the governor. Mm-hmm. I say we've been approached. I have at least been approached by some of the family members of Dale Rost. Some of his extended family actually works for the county. and they're very concerned about that. What is there any sort of, I mean, I suppose the timeline for her is the end of her term, but what is the process with that in terms of if Lindley Rayburn is granted clemency and comes back, I would assume, into our county. I'm not sure if she was from here or lived here, but if there's sort of a reintegration of that, what kind of resources does that, or strain, I suppose, put on your department or perhaps the sheriff's department? Is there anything, or is it just sort of like live and let live, here we go?
Sure, it would have no impact on my office or the sheriff's office, where she would probably still be on supervision for life. So her conviction is a murder conviction with possibility of parole after 25, but she would remain under permanent parole supervision. And literally on murder, you're in parole. It's not post-prison supervision like most felony cases. So there would be that resource, which would be brought to bear from DCJ.
Okay. And then just a final thought, we've been hearing in the news that there's a significant shortage of public defenders. How does that affect what the work that you do?
With all due respect, the caseloads of the public defenders don't hold a candle to the workload that is in this office and most prosecutor offices. So the increase in funding for public defenders has been tremendous over the last 4 or 6 years. And as you may or may not know, 2 of my DDAs, 3 of my DDAs have now gone to the dark side, as I say to them, because they can make so much more money with much less work than the prosecutors can. And so we have literally 3 of them, are 2 locally are doing defense work, and 1 went to Eastern Oregon to work. And as I understand it, he works about half time and is making more than he was making here. So there may well be a shortage of attorneys. We had a discussion just yesterday or the day before with Judge Kaufman Noble coming on, with Cynthia Kaufman Noble coming on. That's leaving a hole in the attorneys who do juvenile work, because that's what she primarily did, as well as her job as municipal court judge. And I think she judges out at the tribe also. So about who they were going to get to fill that, because those positions there are not a lot of lawyers who do that. So I think there are some pressures there. I suppose I'm being a little bit cynical, but I'm pretty protective of the lawyers here and the really big job that they take on, and they do. And it's a little frustrating. The state's always wanting to throw more money at the defense without really looking at the caseloads and the strains that are on those who are doing the state's duties.
Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, any other further questions? Commissioner Kula?
Your last question, Chair, was the question I was going to ask, which is how does the public defender shortage as reported affect? And mine was really going to be a little bit more in a different direction, which is how does that affect the time to trial and kind of the length of time that a lot of these cases are taking? Because you've expressed that they're taking a long time, and my question was really like, is it on your side? Is it on the just there's a lot of cases side, or is it on the public defender side, or is it COVID?
It's multifaceted. So 1, we've only been able to have 1 trial courtroom, which really has put a bottleneck in the whole system. Secondly, COVID. I can't tell you how frequently a defendant says, I can't come to court because I've been exposed to COVID. And so that case gets delayed and delayed and delayed. We've had attorneys who say, I've been exposed to COVID, or I have COVID, and that will delay it. But we've not had the situation where I can't get a lawyer and had a delay. They've always had a lawyer. I don't recall a single case where the court has tried to appoint somebody and there's not been anybody to appoint.
Okay, that's super helpful. And then I guess as a follow-up question, Chair, if I may, on the you talked about RAMOS. Do you have a sense of if this was the cutoff line, how many cases had non-unanimous juries from there forward to today? If it's the cutoff point is this, or if the cutoff point is 1930?
How many cases would come back to us?
Could come back.
If they went and said full retroactivity, we're talking the potential of hundreds and hundreds of cases. If we're talking the on appeal, in custody, on supervision, the hard part there is not knowing how many cases had non-unanimous verdicts. Because, for example, we've had a couple come back already whereby we had some of the counts were unanimous and some were not. And so they come back to us and we look at it, see, do we need to retry? They're only sending back the ones that were non-unanimous. That at least they've made that decision so far. Because we were worried initially they'd send it all back and you have to do it all over. So fortunately, that's not been the case. But we had a case that Kate was just telling me about where we had non-unanimous decisions related to one victim of a multi-victim sexual assault case. And we're opting not to retry that one portion of it. And of course, that's with victim input. We've had total contact with that victim on in making that decision, but we still have a lot of time that the person is serving related to sentences to, I think it's 2 other victims on that case. So it's a little hard to say. I think we're going to know that number. If they cut it off for in custody, on appeal, on supervision, we can literally figure out how many people that is. And then we can go back and start looking and see if that's 50 people. We can go back and start looking at those verdicts and which ones do we know for a fact were non-unanimous? Because that's going to be another part of it. If nobody polled the jury, how do we know it was non-unanimous? Kind of thing. And so is that going to be, if you don't know it was unanimous, it has to come back? That's my gut. But if they put the burden of proof on the defendant, for example, you have to show that it was non-unanimous. Or do they put the burden of proof on the state saying you have to show it was unanimous? Could have a difference in the number of cases or number of counts eligible to come back to us.
Okay, great. That's super helpful. It's clear that there's still a lot of uncertainty then. And I guess a question, and maybe this isn't one because you said you haven't been following the legislation as closely, but will there be a time frame in which you need to get these done?
I know. I think I know. I think the current version of the statute that is dealing with retroactivity of RAMOS puts bookends on how long a person has to challenge their conviction. So, and it's like a year or 2. So that I would certainly prefer that they have to do it now so that the sooner the better, right? The sooner the better. If we're going to have to do it again, the sooner I get it back, the better it is for us to go do it again. Now, whether or not the Oregon Supreme Court would find that to be lawful, I don't know the answer to that yet. The Oregon Supreme Court has been pretty active in defense-related decisions over the last couple of years. And I'm not being critical or at all. I'm just that's an observation on how they've been. And so I literally brought up at the ODA meeting yesterday, do we reasonably believe that the Oregon Supreme Court may make a ruling that it is not retroactive back to the 30s? Do we have any expectation of that? And I think everybody there was concerned that that may be the way that the court goes.
Yeah, and I apologize. I meant to clarify the time once a defendant who believes that they had a non-unanimous verdict on a count, once they respond, is there a window of time for your office And what I'm kind of getting at, District Attorney Barry, is really like, are we going to need to be searching for more money for your staff? And so I just wanted to put that out there. Like, I'm looking at like, are we needing to set aside time and money now or in 2 years, or just trying to look ahead?
Yeah, I didn't know if I should address the budget or not. Ken's probably over there going shaking. He wants to shake his head, but he's being very good. I submitted a budget. We have the budget prepared to go to be uploaded. It already has cuts in 2 positions to be balanced, which is not uncommon. You guys know that annually I come back and go through the add back process. As I mentioned, we're short-staffed already. And I think I mentioned to all 3 of you when we were out at a family place ribbon cutting that I was going to see, whether or not it was possible to get additional staff person, additional lawyer, misdemeanor lawyer on it. So those are already pressure points we have. If these cases come back to us, one, it becomes an instant increase in cases set to go to trial. And if they remain in custody, I think this gets to your question, Commissioner, we'll have 60 days to take them to trial. So it'll be, we have to treat them just like they got arrested yesterday. So they can hold us to that 60 days to have them to trial. Again, this is all new to us, but I'm thinking we're going to start over with, I'm now in custody. I have a right to trial within 60 days.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful. Sorry to take so many questions, Chair.
No, it's wonderful information to know. Back on Measure 110, though, you said that misdemeanor prosecutions were up in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna assume, though, that there's a direct correlation between what would be a drug charge and a property crime. Is that
well, we had already had the reduction of drug crimes from felony to misdemeanor. So that happened, I think, in 19. I don't remember exactly, Commissioner, but I think in 19. Then we had Measure 110 come into effect, which basically eliminated them at all. But we still had an increase in misdemeanor filings, even having taken those completely off the charts. So they would be more like property crimes, what I've always said, the quality of life crimes, disorderly conducts, trespasses, thefts, things like that.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my question is it unreasonable to assume that the increase in those types of crimes are still directly relatable to drug use, or is that not something we even track anymore?
It is not uncommon that we will have drugs involved in the commission of other crimes. To say how much of that with the misdemeanor caseload is a little tougher. We do know that repeat property offenders, of the vast majority on those, have drug-related issues. So as we see that happen, I'm really comfortable saying, yes, that's driven by drug abuse. It's a little harder to say with the kinds of cases we get on misdemeanors. We get domestic violence, we get other assault 4s, we get disorderly conduct, trespasses, theft 3, theft 2, DUI, and it's the overall caseload that we've seen climb. And I can break that down, Commissioner. I mean, if you were interested, we have the ability to pull some of that information and delineate it more.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are watching to see how Measure 110 impacts our communities. And if misdemeanor crimes or prosecutions or whatever are going up in lieu of taking the drug charges off the table, it's just be interesting to know, how many of those are still drug related, and if not for Measure 110 would be prosecuted differently. So
I have the ability in my case management system to run the breakdown of what kinds of cases they are. Okay. We don't have a way that we track drugs related to somebody who's walking down the middle of the street screaming, where we don't track that they were high or having a behavioral health episode or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions for DA Barry?
No, thank you. Thank you, Brad, because you asked us to call us that, but sometimes I
Thank you.
can't help but say DA.
It
Thank
sounds
you,
very
Brad.
informal.
All right, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Brad.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that concludes our department update. Moving on to the work session. We have no work session today. Consent agenda, we have none. Old business, we have none. And that takes us to item I, other business. Item I1 is consideration of approval of a contract employee agreement between Yamhill County and Stephanie Armstrong in the amount of $50 per hour, not to exceed 80 hours per month, effective February 11th, 2022 through June 30th of 2023. And I'm not sure if we had planned to have Ken Friday on to talk about this. No.
I can talk about it briefly. I mean, this is needed. Stephanie Armstrong used to be a planner in Ken's office. Ken's still in the process of trying to recruit and fill positions. And so this contract is to help provide some fill-in work, some on-call work, to have Stephanie's willing to come back and do some on-call fill-in work for Ken's office, which is sorely needed right now. So it's intended to be hourly on call as needed until we can get staffing back up to the levels that Ken needs it to be at. So,
And it sounds like there's some special projects that are going on that take a little bit more workload. So, okay.
I would move approval, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sterrett moves approval of item I1. Is there any further discussion? Nope. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item I2 is consideration of approval of an order vacating a portion of a public street at the request of Kim M. Green without a public hearing, Public Works docket RV-5-2021. And I want to thank Colton for sending over all of that packet of information. I don't know if Colton's on today, or maybe Christian could answer. But I had a question, just kind of a technical question about the lot parcels, and which one Kim Green owns, or if maybe it's both of them, but it was just a technical question there.
and if it helps, Colton is attending the meeting, and so if we can have him promoted, here he is.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Sorry, my computer is running a little slow today.
No worries. So I was reviewing the packet. I had a note to ask you because it looks like the public street or public right of way kind of bisects two different lots. One of them is 4402. One of them is 4501. Are there two different owners, or do the Greens own both of those?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick.
Okay.
My understanding of this is that the only portion of the right of way that will be vacated is on property that she owns. Her property surrounds and encompasses the portion of the right of way that's being vacated here. So there are no other interested parties who could weigh in on it, basically.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to read on the maps where the lines go.
Yeah, I know, it was they're pretty complicated. Yeah, okay, so 4402, 4501, she owns all of that. And I think also 4401 she owns as well.
Okay.
I'd have to pull it up to check, but.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner, any further questions?
Chair, I move
Okay.
approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Sterrett moves approval. Any further discussion? Commissioner
No
Kula?
further discussion except to say thank you, Colton, for working on this.
Oh,
Thanks,
yeah,
Colton.
very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to approve item I2 and no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay. We are moving on to item I3. Whoops. Yes, item I3. Consideration of approval of amendment number 5 to agreement number 169533 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority for Public Health Services, Board Order 21-248 in the amount of $76,500. And commissioners, do I have a motion to approve this item?
Chair, I move that we approve.
Okay, Commissioner Kula moves approval of item I3. Is there further discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item I4 is a consideration of approval of change order number 1 to the agreement between Yamhill County and Integrity Builders, Board Order 21-448 in the amount of $29,009. And I believe this is associated with the improvements for the public health building in Newburgh. Correct. Okay.
Chair, I would move approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Sterrett moves approval.
Ken, were you going to add something?
I was just going to confirm that, correct, this is for the new HHS building in Newburgh.
Perfect. Thank you, Ken. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion, commissioners? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Okay, it looks like items 5 through 8 are dealing with our CCOs, our CCO. Item 5 is consideration of approval of the local mental health authority, local public health authority, and coordinated care organization agreement between Yamhill County and Yamhill County Care Organization, retroactive to January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2022, replacing the agreement approved under Board Order 20-455. And I suppose I'll open this up for discussion.
I have a question, Ken. In terms of these separate contracts, where does the syringe service contract with Provoking Hope come in? Trying to make sure I just want to have a little discussion about that. Would that be item 7? Where are we?
I was thinking it was item 6, but I might be wrong.
So in looking at this agreement under section N, item 12, it provides for the CCO to fund HHS to contract with a local nonprofit to administer a needle exchange program as detailed in attachment E. So at least the funding appears to be covered under this agreement.
Correct. This is the approval for the funding from the CCO to support the program, and then the actual program with Provoking Hope is actually a separate agreement directly between HHS and Provoking Hope. But yeah, it took me a minute to find it in the same section that Christian found in the.
And then attachment E provides a little more explanation of what the.
Yes, the attachment E, I've got that. I'm reading the specifics of that. I just wanted to have some discussion about that piece, before we moved on.
Okay. And I'm not sure if Director Manfred planned to join us today. But if not, perhaps we can move that to next week if she would like to join and talk about that program specifically.
Okay,
I can reach out right now and see if Lindsay's available to answer specific questions about that.
okay.
So let's see. Christian, since these items 5 through 8 are kind of all related to the CCO, can I just skip down and maybe while we're waiting for Director Manfred to respond?
Yeah, we could move on to the next item and then come back.
Okay. Commissioners, I think I'm just going to skip down to item 9, just so we can sort of have this.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're going to move down to item 9. We will revisit 5 through 8. Item I9 is consideration of the appointments to the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council, LPSC, each to fill the unexpired terms through July of 2024. Item A is Cecilia Martinez, Victims Service Manager, to replace position vacated by Deb Bridges. B, Jason Hennis, HHS Deputy Director, to replace HHS Director Lindsay Manfred. And C, Jeremy Ruby, Jail Captain, non-voting member, to replace Captain Richard Geist. Commissioners, do I have a motion to approve item I9?
So moved.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you.
And thanks to all these folks who are willing to serve on the committee and who have been.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to move. Let's see. Ken, did you have an update on Director Manfred?
She's in the process of joining the meeting right now.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go back to item I5. Commissioners, if you're open to it, and just so we're not stuck waiting too long, if you would like to move to item I10, I can certainly discuss that letter in the meantime.
That sounds good, Chair.
Okay.
Yes, Chair.
So item I10 is consideration of approval of a letter to Yamhill County superintendents regarding school mask policies. And this is a letter that I added to the agenda. As you know, I believe it's now 2 weeks ago that the governor and OHA signaled that indoor masking policies could be lifted sooner or on March 31st, but for schools specifically was March 31st. And the intention was to give schools time to adjust and make some plans before that goes into effect. What they also indicated is that there is a connection between having superintendents and school boards have local control over what the masking policies are going to look like in schools past March 31st, but it's also done in conjunction with the local public health authority. I've been receiving a lot of feedback. We've seen, rallies throughout the county over the past week and a half by parents who really want certainty when it comes to this policy. And so my intention is to make sure that every superintendent in our county is aware that Yamhill County Public Health has no intention of issuing any sort of guidance or rules or notice or anything regarding school masking policies past March 31st. And obviously my hope is that they also don't issue any guidance and simply drop the mandate. But that's the intention of the letter. I wanted to make sure that it's clear that we don't intend to issue guidance because there's been a lot of questions about, parents have been asking what's going to happen next. They're not really sure that they can actually count on March 31st as the deadline for this. So I wanted to give some certainty there. Commissioner Sterrett.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I had, there was a communication from OSBA, from the School Board Association, to the to school boards, basically saying that the decisions would be left to the county health departments and to the individual schools. So I reached out to Director Manfred and asked how would we be involved in that decision making, and the communication I got back said that, like any business, it would be left up to them, so that if the local control would go back to the schools, to the school board, to the individual superintendent. So that was the information we got when this was first announced. And here is Director Manfred, just to speak to that.
Thank you. Director Manfred, so we brought you on for another reason to talk about the syringe program, but we're actually in the middle of discussion about the school masking policies and kind of the direction that OHA gave to counties, public health departments, as well as school boards and school districts. And so the topic of discussion is a letter to the superintendents, just to say that Yamhill County Public Health doesn't have any intention of issuing any sort of masking policy or guideline to schools as of March 31st. And Commissioner Sterrett brought up an email exchange she had with you. I don't know if you want to address that, but feel free to.
Sure. Thank you for the bit of the context there, as I jumped in right at the tail end of that. So my understanding is that ultimately it is up to the school boards to determine, or the school, however they're set up, the superintendents and school boards, to determine whether or not they're going to continue masking or follow the changes with the OHA's requirements, and that it's not a decision made by the local public health. We can certainly provide information if they ask us for information that might be helpful in their decision making, and I'm happy to do that and welcome any questions that they may have, but ultimately it's their decision.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioners, any further discussion on the letter?
Well, Chair, I would say, since in light of Director Manfred's comments, it seems like modifying the letter to reflect that it's, that it's to school boards and superintendents from the Board of Commissioners, urging them to not reimpose or to not impose would be maybe a better path forward, right?
Yes, well, that's kind of that's how I tried to word it, without being too heavy-handed about that, just because I do support local control. And if
I was just thinking that.
If it's up to them, it's up to them, right? But what I was hoping the letter would accomplish is just a statement that we will not be issuing any guidelines that would potentially influence their decision, but also that we're concerned about the health and safety of our kids with these masking policies, and we're hoping that they agree with us. So I think it gets there. It's just a little bit softer.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, I would move approval of the letter.
Okay. Commissioner Sterrett moves approval of item I-10, the letter going to the Yamhill County Superintendents. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Let the record show Commissioner Sterrett and Berschauer voted in the affirmative. Commissioner Kula voted in the negative. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us back to item I-5, which is one of the 4 items regarding our CCO. There was, Director Manfred, there was a question about how the syringe program or the needle exchange program fits into these items. And Commissioner Sterritt can elaborate a little bit more on her question there, but that's why we pulled you in.
Thank you. And thank you, Director Manfred. I know we had this discussion yesterday, but just maybe a little background. When this was first, when the Budget Committee and the board was first approached about setting up a needle exchange program, there was certainly a bit of controversy. We got a lot of input from the community. You said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And then the discussion really went to the broader purpose of the program, which was to engage people who have addiction problems, who are IV drug users, and try to get some kind of outreach and engagement. And then, so that the program was put in place. And then I remember the proviso at that time was, let's see some data. Let's see whether or not this is actually working. Because we know, for instance, with Measure 110, only about 65 people have actually opted into treatment. So is this really, what is this $60,000 paying for, and is it effective? So some of my questions were around the data and whether or not we could say that this was obviously our return on investment was something that we could, with hard numbers, say, because over the years we've not really had any hard numbers to back that up. So that was what my concern was about, what we're really doing and what we're really funding.
And I unmuted also because I wanted to also just, as far as, because I also want to recognize that Lindsay was in a different role when this first program came about, and there was a previous director that presented this, and part of the discussions and the original lengthy discussion, because it came with a general fund request for the county to help stand up the pilot for this program. So there was that element that was also incorporated into this, and I just wanted to further add, and we kind of talked a little bit. I think I hit on this before I jumped off to call Lindsay to have her join too. Is again, this is the program has continued, and then this is the funding mechanism through the CCO, through that CCO contract to sustain that program. It's not under the model of when it was on the pilot program. As far as budgetarily, this was something that it's continued, where we have CCO funding that's, that comes through HHS, that then is part of the contract with Provoking Hope to provide the service. And then, so there is a separate agreement with Provoking Hope in delivering these services. But again, it is described in the amendment as well about the baseline of the services. And now I'll turn it over to Lindsay so she can share a little bit more about the specific questions and the data and answer those questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken, for that. I appreciate that, a little bit of the history. So as Ken said, the money is from Yamhill CCO dollars. It comes through our contract as a local public health authority, as does a couple of other components, as you can see in the contract, where the CCO has really looked to us and asked us to be the experts in this area related to harm reduction and how that fits in with other bigger public health strategies related to harm reduction and supporting individuals wherever they're at in the spectrum of the recovery process. And so one of the things that I do also want to just start us out with is a reminder that last July, when the contract was coming through for Provoking Hope, because unfortunately, sometimes our contracts don't always align in timing, right? Our CCO contract goes from a January to December contract, whereas many of our other contracts follow our general fiscal year from a July to June 30th. And so this is one of those examples where the CCO contract is January to December, and our contract with Provoking Hope, which is quite expansive and includes a lot of things, including the syringe exchange or needle exchange program, begins in July. And so last year, when I brought that contract with Provoking Hope forward to the commissioners, there was a request for additional data, and I provided what I felt like at the time was a fairly substantial report that showed a fair amount of information around needles in, needles out, referral patterns, what people were being referred to, as well as data that we were able to work with our CCO to pull around emergency department utilization, around skin infections, the number of skin infections, the cost of skin infections, all of those types of things. And I think that data really showed that there was a dramatic decrease in those types of things. And so I think that while certainly we all hope that any individual who's engaging with a needle exchange program, or really any of our other peer supports or any of our other programs, really do take that step into recovery, we also know that there are additional benefits in addition to that, getting people into recovery that we see from the needle exchange. And so I want to highlight those and just recognize that there's a multitude of things that are really supported through this program. I think Provoking Hope as a peer organization is well poised to be able to engage in the community in ways that other organizations, including our own, may not be able to. And so I think they do a really wonderful job. And then on the back end, we have data analytics and public health team that are really supporting them to make sure that they have some of those technical components that are built into the program that they may not have the ability to do on their own. And so it's a real partnership. And of course, with the CCO who's providing the funding for us to do that. And if there's any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them as well.
I appreciate that. I think that's good information. I know that there were concerns early on about where the mobile unit wasn't, and maybe a little update on that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been, certainly there's the fixed location. I'm just going to try to pull up so I know exactly where they are. The fixed location of the unit is largely at Provoking Hope, and that's where they see the most foot traffic, it seems. But there is also locations that they go to in Sheridan, which has been pretty fruitful. And then a couple of other places that they will go just kind of as needed to do sweeps, places like Joe Dancer Park and other places where people either frequently we get calls and folks say that they're concerned about needles and either do that reactively if those calls are made, or proactively just knowing that tends to be places where needles are often found. So I could get an updated list and I'd be happy to do that. I know that there were some challenges in a couple of the areas, largely Newburgh, where they were really looking for a really good location and haven't quite found that yet, but I know are continuing to work on it. It's also my understanding that anytime that they've gone somewhere where there has been concerns raised by community members, that the feedback I've gotten from community is that the folks at Provoking Hope have been really wonderful to work with them in terms of saying, okay, well, maybe this isn't the best place for this geographic area. Let's find somewhere else, or helping work through any of those concerns in the community.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you.
I think Director Manfred, there's no doubt in my mind that the work that Provoking Hope does in our county is critical. But as you know, that people who are in the recovery community and in those efforts sometimes are divided on this type of program. I'm acquaintances with many folks who do a lot of work with Provoking Hope, and when this needle exchange program came out, it was bothersome enough to them that they had to leave. They couldn't support that kind of activity. And obviously we just talked about the placement of the big blue ambulance, if you will. There was a lot of controversy over where it was being parked. At one point it was parked behind my house, so I got to see it every day. And the accessibility, or the number of people who are actually accessing it, there was issues about where it was placed in Newburgh as well. I don't know if those have been remedied, but I think that I see our role as sort of taking the emotion out of this issue, because I'm not in recovery, so I don't have a strong feeling about whether or not that's something that is critical for our community, or whether it's it's enabling, if you will. And so for me, I'm trying to take the emotion out of it and simply look at the data. And does the data support the amount of investment that we have into this? And so from the time that we discussed this last year, until now, are we seeing a dramatic increase in usage of that service? Is it sort of flatlined? I mean, what's kind of the general overview of the data?
Well, certainly since I didn't realize this would be a conversation of topic, we have not analyzed the data that's come to us. My plan was, as requested from the board, that when I brought the contract with Provoking Hope back, to provide an updated report, similar to the one that we provided with updated data from July. And I'm happy to resend that data. I do have raw numbers in front of me because Diane does send those. From Provoking Hope, Diane, the executive director. So I can kind of just ramble off some numbers, but I'm not sure how helpful that is going to be without really reviewing them. I think the total number of individuals served, it looks like over a six month period was 67 individuals. 46 of them were repeat individuals, meaning that they came more than once. There have been 7,878 needles that have been used, or excuse me, that have been collected. Sorry, I want to make sure I get the number right. I'm just pulling through an Excel spreadsheet here. There have been 7,878 needles that have been collected from Provoking Hope. There have been 6,682 that have been dispensed or given out. There have been a number of various referrals, and they've got them broken down by different types of referrals. There have been 19 referrals to treatment. I was able to get some clarification after our conversation yesterday, Mary, or Commissioner Starrett, that the referrals mean that the individual indicated at the moment of time that they were using the needle exchange, that they were interested in treatment, and were actively wanting to engage. And so we're taking some next steps with Provoking Hope to move forward in that. I'm not able to say how many people followed through because, again, this is anonymous. And so we don't have a way to say they came back into a healthcare system from a treatment standpoint. There was 45 referrals to other community services. There were 15 referrals to communicable disease treatment. That could be a number of different communicable diseases, certainly. So that, again, that's super raw data from a spreadsheet that I got, last a couple of weeks ago that I was able to pull up, but we have not analyzed the data in terms of creating a report that's easy to read and to follow. And we certainly haven't followed up on what we did last year and the previous year, which was pull CCO data related to emergency department utilization, disease infection rates like endocarditis or skin infections that have been very costly to the CCO, and also can have pretty poor outcomes for individuals should they get heart disease. That's not obviously a thing we want anyone to experience. So again, hopefully that's helpful. Our plan again was this summer to release another report. I also just want to recognize that I completely understand the nuance and the challenge that some people have around the whole concept of harm reduction practices. And I think that they're still really important for us to continue to help people understand, whether we're talking about syringe exchange or whether we're talking about something like medication-assisted treatment for individuals with substance use disorder. So another program that we operate through our behavioral health programs, right? Those are life-saving programs, whether we're talking about a life-saving program because we're giving someone a medication that curbs their need for or cravings for using an opioid drug like heroin or something else, right? That's a life-saving medication that we give people. And there's a lot of controversy because for a long time, our substance use disorder programs have been really rooted in 100% abstinence. And so giving someone a medication can feel like it's enabling or a crutch or things like that to folks that have been really rooted in that world of abstinence only. But what we know is it saves lives, just like we wouldn't say someone shouldn't get their insulin, right? Because we know that lifestyle factors can drastically improve diabetes, which is 100% true. And we want to work on those things too. And we don't want to deny someone a life-saving medication. And I think you can say the same thing with a syringe exchange. We know that people contract things like hepatitis C and HIV and get skin infections that travel to their heart when they use needles that are not clean. And so we want to keep people as healthy as possible until they are ready to take that step into recovery. And we hope that they will do that. And we will certainly do our best to be here for them when they are.
Thank you, Director Manfred.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kula?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I really appreciate Director Manfred's kind of laying out both the history of the program and also in light of DA Barry's presentation on an increase in overdoses and the dangers of fentanyl in the community, that we have a program that is run by peers and that also has, as Director Manfred described, the ability through Diane Reynolds to communicate really clearly with the public when they have concerns about the placement, for example, of the van. So with that, I mean, if obviously you have more questions or comments, but I think it's appropriate for us, in light of the agenda items, to approve the contracts with our local CCO that also include the needle exchange program funding as it goes to Provoking Hope.
Thank you, Commissioner Kula. I think just for me, because when you're talking about run numbers, and again, this was just, kind of on the fly, but 7,800 needles collected, 6,600 given out. It sort of feels like just, if you're just looking at that, it feels like just a revolving door, like we're just a provider. So it would be really fascinating to see from the onset of this program, what's the correlation of those numbers with folks who have entered treatment, as well as perhaps a decrease in treating people for some of the conditions that you described that come with needle usage. And maybe doing kind of an overview of since the program started with that, because those sound like really large numbers. And if they're equal, then it sort of feels like, well, we're just providing and then we're picking up, and we're providing and we're picking up. So to go back over, when was that? 2018, I think. So 4 years or so. To go back and just sort of have an overview and see that would be really helpful, I think.
I mean, I have the report from July up, and I would be happy to screen share and show some of the things around, inpatient claims and cost utilization for things like sepsis, which is a really lethal blood infection that can happen when using dirty needles, and things like that. And so I'm happy to share now. I'm happy to send it to you where you can see that. And again, my intention was come this summer to pull the data again in that manner so that we could look at that. I don't have, because a lot of that is claims data generated, I don't have it at my fingertips at this moment. But I can show you what was pulled with the last report around those things.
Okay, yeah, if you want to resend that, that would be great. And then obviously looking forward to that in the summer. Commissioner Sterrett?
No, I just wanted to say I appreciate the information, because as we've heard, this has historically been so controversial and so steeped in, is this an evidence-based program going forward? So while I know that we're not funding it through county general fund, and that this was moved to ask the CCO, and I believe you and I abstained when it came to voting on this particular item. I just want to say, going forward, I want to keep eyes on it and be able to justify that we're, putting our imprimatur on this and saying, yeah, it's a program worth continuing, or is it something we need to maybe retool? So thank you for that information.
Thank you. So I'm going to call for a motion for item 5. I already read the item, but if Director Manfred, if you want to hang on for just a few minutes more while we go through the CCO items, just in case there's more questions, that would be helpful.
Chair, I would move approval of item 5.
Okay, Commissioner Sterrett moves approval of item I5. Any further discussion?
No, Chair.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item I6 is consideration of approval of amendment number 2 to the Administrative Services Agreement between Yamhill County Health and Human Services and Yamhill Community Care Organization, Board Order 20-456, retroactive to January 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2022. And
Chair, I would move approval.
great, Thank you. Commissioner Sterrett moves approval. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Item I7, consideration of approval of amendment number 2 to the provider agreement between Yamhill County Health and Human Services and Yamhill Community Care Organization, Board Order 20-457, retroactive to January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'd move approval.
Commissioner Sterrett moves
I
approve.
could, Commissioner Sterrett, I could see you going for that unmute button, so I gave you the opportunity.
Well, you don't remember back in the day, Commissioner, we used to have motions based on your area of liaison. So for instance, if you notice when there's a public works, I just kind of defer to you because that's your wheelhouse.
Oh, don't worry,
Great,
Commissioner, I notice.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, Commissioner Sterrett moves approval of item I7. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Item I8, consideration of approval of the business associate agreement between Yamhill County Health and Human Services and Yamhill Community Care Organization, retroactive to January 1st, 2022.
I
Take
move
it away.
approval of item I8.
Thank you. Commissioner Sterrett moves approval. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. And thank you, Director Mann, for coming on last minute and answering questions. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we are through other business. Commissioners, do we need to take a 5-minute break or are we ready to jump into the public hearing?
I'm happy to jump into the public hearing.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to open the public hearing. And on the agenda, we have consideration of a mass gathering permit application for the 2022 Memorial Weekend Boat Races event on May 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th, 2022. Applicant is Newburgh Boat Club and Columbia Outboard Racing Association. And I will call now for testimony in support of the application.
It looks, Chair, like we've got a couple of people who are heading in.
Yes, I can see them. They're in the ether. Welcome, and if you're here in support of the application for the Memorial Weekend boat races, you are welcome to unmute and turn your video on.
Good morning.
Good morning. Is this Mr. Schmidt?
This is Mr. Schmidt. Yes, I just lost communication a minute ago, so.
No problem.
We're respectfully asking again this year for our 74th boat race, permission to exclusively use Rogers Landing, as stated in the letter from Friday evening through Sunday midnight. This will be a race similar to what we've done in the past. We do have 2 North American National Championships that we will also be running with this race. And I don't know what else to say outside of it's a continuation of one of the oldest running races in the United States.
Great, thank you. Ken Heffer.
Yes, and if we could have the folks that are joining when you, prior to giving your comments or right now, Mr. Schmidt, if you could state your name and address for the record, so that way we're making sure we're capturing it for the record. We don't necessarily get that off of the screen. So we want to make sure we get that captured.
Don Schmidt, 1604 North Meridian, Newburgh, Oregon.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. And we have a couple of other folks on the line as well. I'm assuming testifying in favor of the application. I see a Lorraine Thorson. Lorraine, if you can hear us, if you could unmute. Okay, I also see a Carol and Dwayne on the screen. If you are ready to provide testimony in favor of the application, please unmute. Okay, I'm not sure if we're having technical difficulties or if it's just my screen, but I'm not hearing anybody or seeing anybody.
No, Chair, they're both muted.
Okay.
And sometimes back in the day when we were in person, Don would speak for everybody, but there'd be a good lineup of other supporters. So I feel the support.
Okay. Don, are you, we seem to be having trouble with Carol and Dwayne and Lorraine. Are you comfortable with your testimony if they're not able to come on?
Yes, I am. Lorraine is actually our person that does all our paperwork for us. And Dwayne is one of our members that usually speaks up at the in-person when we were able to do that. And hopefully we'll be able to do that again in the near future. But we have about, we'll have right around 100 to 110 racers this year that will bless our event. So is there any questions from any of your commissioners?
I understand this is the 74th anniversary of this event.
That is correct. We started in 1948, I believe, was the first American Powerboat Association race put on by the club. Before that, we did have other races, and we've actually have trophies that go clear back to 1924, when the race used to go from Newburgh to Salem and back.
Very nice. Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Schmidt? Commissioner Sterrett.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Schmidt and to Carol and Dwayne and Ms. Thorson, because there's a lot of work, a lot of volunteer hours that go into bringing this to Newburgh. So thank you for making this a Memorial Day tradition in Newburgh. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think, Christian, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't see it specifically called out in the application, and I believe it may have been addressed during the previous hearings in years past. But generally, this comes with a request that the application fee for the mass gathering permit be reduced to $250. The board has historically approved that reduction in recognition of the impact that this event has for the community, and the association, the club, has also usually had some sort of a charitable component to this event. So I didn't know if Mr. Schmidt could briefly touch on that, so that the board can make a decision about whether or not to continue that practice.
Yes, we would request that we keep the $250 application fee. Due to the stuff that went on last year as far as COVID, our income wasn't quite as high as it normally is, but We did donate to Boy Scouts. We've donated to the Yamhill County CERT group. VFW, we heavily support them, not only financially, but we also support them with manpower to help them with their raising and lowering of their flags on particular holidays. And we do support the high school grad program also.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Christian, I must have misread the application. I thought it said it was asking for a fee waiver. But I suppose I can pull it up here.
There is one year that we did have a fee waiver, but every other year it's been $250.
Commissioners, I apologize if I missed that. If the request is for a fee waiver, that is certainly within the authority of the board to decide if they wanted to waive the fee entirely or keep it at $250. I think the $250 was meant to sort of, identify that there is some staff time involved in processing the applications. We do need to reach out and get input from the different departments that also touch on this event. So that's why I believe the prior boards had set that amount at $250, but it's certainly up to the board to discuss if they want to go ahead and waive the fee entirely.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, if there's no further questions for Mr. Schmidt, I'm going to call for.
Commissioner, if you could just one more item, ask one more time if there was anyone else in attendance or participating in the meeting who would like to offer any other testimony.
Sure. Is there any other testimony in favor of the application?
Or in opposition? Just general.
Oh, I was going to move to opposition next.
Okay. Thank you.
And I see Carolyn Dwayne came back on, but I'm still not seeing or hearing them. So.
Hi, Lorraine Larson is here. Do you hear me now?
Yes. Hi,
I
Lorraine.
finally figured out how to unmute. I'm sorry.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm totally in favor of having this event. And what else do you need to hear from me?
Just your testimony in support of the application.
Yes, I completely support this. It's a wonderful event, and it's a great family event, and it's a good event for the Newburgh area people.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions for Lorraine? No? Okay. Thank you, Lorraine.
You're welcome.
And Carolyn Dwayne, if you are able to unmute, we can take your testimony as well.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry for my difficulties on my end on this. One thing I'd like to say, not only is it the 74th running, but it's one of the outdoor events that is open to as much as we can, open to the public, whatever COVID-19 allows us to, that is free. I mean, we charge no admission whatsoever. This is an event based on family and friends, and it's open to everyone. So it not only is it a very safe place, and we do have the American Powerboat Association and Cora, Seattle Boat Racing. There is a lot of community outside of Yamhill that's involved in this as well. So, when you go through Newburgh and some of the people long time thing, everyone looks forward to this memorial race. So yes, I'm very much in favor of it. Super amount of volunteer hours are involved starting from Thursday all the way to the end of the event. And we've been so graciously thankful for the board in supporting this historical event.
Thank you, Dwayne, and I apologize if you could state your full name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Dwayne Sharp, and I live at 20730 Southwest Trails End Drive, Sherwood, Oregon, 97140.
Wonderful, thank you. And Lorene, if you are still on, I did also forget to ask you for your full name and address for the record.
Okay, I'm sorry. Lorraine Thorson, 18775 Southwest Vista Street, Aloha, Oregon.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, any further testimony in support of the application? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to, I will call for testimony against the Memorial Day boat race application.
And I would just add that anybody who's in attendance in the participant room, if they're wishing to make testimony on this application, if you raise your hand, staff can promote and you can make your comments. At this time, I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand in the room, but just want to make sure we were clear on process.
Thank you.
Oh, they have somebody who raised their hand.
Oh, I can't see who the names are, so you'll have to let me know. It looks like we have Catherine Reinhardt joining us. Miss Reinhardt, if you could unmute and state your full name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Catherine Reinhardt, 11185 Southeast Mather Road, Clackamas, Oregon.
Thank you. And we are ready to take your testimony on this application.
Okay, and I'm really just going to echo the things that have been said by the other members of the Newburgh Boat Club. What a wonderful event this is, and we just receive compliments from all of those that attend and appreciate the fact that we're down there and provide the ability to have the race.
Great, thank you. Okay, let the record show that that was testimony in favor. And I'll call one more time for testimony in opposition to the application.
Yeah, not seeing anyone raising their hands, so I think we're okay.
Okay. Okay, so I believe I closed the hearing, so we're going to close the hearing. And then I will open the discussion up. Sorry, Christian.
Just one other point, Noelle correctly reminded me that one of the other bases for that $250 charge is that we do have some publication costs and fees related to publishing the notice for today's hearing. We published that in the graphic this year, and the cost was just over $130,000. So that fee has gone to both acknowledge and recognize the staff time, but also to cover those publication fees. So thank you, Noelle, for reminding me of that.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to open up discussion and deliberation. Commissioners, my thought is that this is a wonderful event for our community. Brings in a lot of tourism from Washington and California, and I love that they sort of take the whole week and start with cleaning up the park and making it look really nice, and really kind of gearing up the community for this. So I would be in support of the application and setting the fee at $250. Commissioner Sterrett?
I would, is that a motion? Because if you didn't make the motion, I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
Was that a motion?
No, it was a thought. So go
It was
ahead.
a thought. Okay. Well, I share that thought. So I would move approval of item J1, which is approval of the mass gathering permit for the 2022 Memorial Boat Races on May 27th through the 30th, 2022. And setting the fee at $250.
Sounds great. Motion's on the floor. Commissioner Kula, any thoughts?
I'm happy to do further discussion. So for further discussion, thank you for making the motion, Commissioner Sterrett.
That was your further discussion? Okay.
That was my further discussion. Until we have a definition of what further discussion is, I can thank people in further discussion.
Okay, is there further discussion? Okay. There is a motion, sorry, step on my process. There's a motion on the floor to approve the 2022 Memorial Weekend boat races application. Commissioners, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair, real quick, I'm sorry if I could, just a reminder, what will happen now is we'll prepare a formal permit, which will come back before the board closer to the actual date of the event, once we've gathered all of the remaining information we need from the various agencies and received the insurance certificates and the remaining documentation from the applicants. So that will be coming before the board in the not too distant future. So there will be one final step.
Thank you. All right, so moving back to our informal session. We are on item K, announcements. Commissioners, any announcements? Ken.
If I could, before announcements, if I may, just a couple things, because I know under KI we have information about advisory committee vacancies. It's a recurring thing on the agenda. One, I just wanted to, again, a reminder that we're currently seeking interested folks on serving on the nonprofit grant review committee. And also just wanted to also remind commissioners that if you had suggestions or names that you wanted to forward as well, please go ahead and send those to Carrie Martin. But we also have that open. We have an announcement on the main page of the website under the ground announcement, also looking to find applicants to serve on that committee. The other item that we have the vacancy posted on the website on the committee's page, but the other one I wanted to call attention to, because there's kind of a short turnaround, is we do have a vacancy on the budget committee. Denny Elmer's term expired at the end of the budget process last year. I reached out to, I put him on the spot a year ago on the last one to ask if he'd be interested. And he was exploring other things. And I also did a follow-up email a few weeks ago, and I haven't had any response. And due to the importance that in order for us to be able to go through the full budget adoption process, we need to make sure that we have a full budget committee. We are seeking proposals or seeking applicants to serve on the budget committee. So I thought those were a couple of areas I wanted to call attention to.
Great, Commissioner Sterrett.
I just wanted to jump in. Thank you for that, Ken. Thank you, Chair. Is that Denny Elmer said that he would be interested in reapplying for that. And so I'm not sure what the process is. Does he just have to reapply and we vote on that? Or is it a bigger process than that?
I think it's up to the board on how you want to proceed. Historically, it's kind of like the first right of refusal, what the board has done in reappointing previous committee members if they're interested in serving again. It's really up to the board. If I did, because I hadn't heard back from Denny, I didn't get a response. I did put a date on. I'm filling in here with words while I look up really quick what I did. There we go. So I did in the posting, I said we'd be accepting applications till March 11, 2021. And so again, this is something that we can't necessarily adopt a budget unless we have a full budget committee. So if Denny is interested in applying and signing up for another term on the budget committee, what I'd like to do, because I had already posted it and it was already sweating this, that I could come back after that March 11th date and then we could take action at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, so commissioners, anyone maybe have a more direct line to him that can put a bug in his ear and have him respond? Commissioner Sterrett?
Chair, he has responded. He is interested in
Oh,
reapplying.
yes. Okay, perfect. All right. I had a note about going back to in-person meetings in room 32, that we will be starting that as of April 1st, considering the changes to indoor masking policies, which means that our first in-person meeting would be April 7th. So I just want to make sure that's everyone's aware of that, and we're good to go with that.
Yeah, Chair, I was gonna, that was a note on my sheet too. I talked with Ken about it, and as I understand it, the courts or the DA's office is using the space right now. I would like to have that space back, and I'm pleased that we're going to. It is still, what, 7 weeks? No, it's not that far. It's a ways out. I can't do the math, and I'm not gonna do the math while I'm trying to talk. But I'm looking forward to it. So thank you for that update, Chair, and thanks, Ken, for working on this.
Well, in the indoor mask policies may drop sooner than that, but I think just for the sake of planning and for the DA's office, that would be good for us to just set a date. So April 1st seems like a good number. The other thing I had on my list was Commissioner Kula and I were on the Willamette Workforce Partnership meeting yesterday. And we, obviously we don't have a chance to discuss next steps on that meeting, but I was curious, I think it was Senate Bill 1545, if I got that right. The governor's workforce bill, investment in workforce, there's some issues around where that money goes, whether it should go directly to the consortiums or if it should go through another state entity. Commissioner Kula, do you feel like that's something that we need to weigh in on in terms of testimony as a board? I wanted to bring that up now just so we can discuss it in public session. Yeah,
and thank you. I think it's obviously, in my view, obviously best to change where it's going first, but realistically it is going to go to the workforce boards, likely through them. Let me check on the status of it. It moved to revenue, but it's also now like awaiting passage in the Senate. So let me check to see whether there's actually a place where we can influence before.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
And so Commissioner Sterrett, just for reference, there's what was it, $95 million in the governor's plan was slated to go to HEC. And there's concern over that because Willamette Workforce Partnership just now got money out of that particular entity that was, in motion last summer. So there's a significant delay. So their preference would be just to receive that money directly and handle the issues that they need to handle. So my question to Commissioner Kula was just, can we influence that discussion? Would we be able to help them out in terms of their lobbying efforts? So, okay. I think that was all on my list. Commissioner Sterrett, did you have any announcements as well?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Got a really nice phone call from a gentleman who wanted to give props to one of our transit drivers, Gary, who says it makes his morning commute, and sometimes he needs dial-a-ride. It makes his morning commute a joy, and he saved a lot of money, he said, on taxis. And so he just wanted to pass that along. I'll be letting Cynthia know so that she can thank Gary for us. It's always nice to hear that somebody has made it easier for someone in dealing with a situation. So I'm going to be passing that along. Wanted to just an update. Northwest Senior Disability Services does have some significant vacancies in our county as far as staffing with adult protective service and with caseworkers. So they're looking at some creative ways to get those positions funded. Unfortunately, there are a lot of folks in long-term care facilities who are having to that are shutting down out of county that are having to find other alternative care. So that's a significant issue, and we're hoping that that gets rectified soon. Wanted to call attention to my ongoing quest to get good information on COVID on our website, is that I'd asked our director to get some information from OHA on the difference between hospitalized with and hospitalized from COVID. And Director Manfred said that she had posed that question to Oregon Health Authority back in January. We haven't heard back. That's been kind of tough to get that information, and also information on breakthrough cases. And one of the criteria we're finding out on COVID death is if you've been in the hospital and either 14 days before or 60 days afterwards, you had a positive lab test, you are considered a COVID death. So I think we need to get some more transparency around what those death stats are like. And I think that's about all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Kula.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Wanted to give a brief update on Parkway, which met this morning. There have been some proposals to change and like further phase 2, with the lack of assurance that there's money for past this first chunk of phase 2. And so we had a lengthy discussion of that. I actually asked the staff at ODOT if we could actually see what traffic projections look like from the different proposals of excluding people from coming one way or another, primarily because having phase 1 end at 219 has, as you know, created a route to I-5 that is busy and dangerous. And so I said, I don't want to be an obstructionist, but I do want you to, I want to see when we're providing advice and counsel upon which subphases happen first and second and third, that we don't create another, we don't create a scenario that is dangerous, frankly. So they're going to take a look at that. The engineers really said, we really just want to do it all at once rather than having subphases, so we don't have to worry about these interim kind of potentials for gridlock or congestion or danger. And then there's a further conversation going on at Parkway about a local match for phase 1 versus local match for phase 2, or sorry, phase 2 versus phase 2 and 3, and whether that comes down to just a proposal to the Board of Commissioners and to contributing cities around refinancing the existing debt. So I've asked Chair Hageberg and Brett Baker from Springboard, who's taking on the role of financing expert, to bring a proposal before us when they're ready to. I said, you know, the ball is in your court on that right now, because we still don't know what ODOT wants for a local match, but we do know that ODOT is setting aside money from the federal infrastructure package that can be used in a complicated manner to act as a state match for local match for federal dollars. So that's the latest on it, and I'm happy to, you know, you can connect with Chair Hageberg, but hopefully he comes before us with a proposal at some point. And then I think that's it. Yes, the only other thing is that the Oregon Parks and Rec District, Department of State Lands, and Willamette River Keepers are doing a series of cleanups along with volunteers from Wheatland Ferry through Rogers Landing on the Willamette. And they're all in May, and I will keep you posted when we know more about the specific date at the specific location. But wonderfully, solid waste through Director Friday and Recology have offered to cover the cost of garbage.
Nice, very nice. Okay. Any other announcements? No, we're good. Okay. All right, it looks like that's a wrap. I'm going to close the Yamaha County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for February 17th, 2022. And we hope you have a wonderful President's Day long 3-day weekend.
Thank you.